Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Random Sunset, where we talk about random topics. I'm your host, Site Dolo. Right now, today, I don't have my drawing box sitting here, and I don't have a special guest, as you guys noticed. But yeah, today I decided to talk about history. Let's talk about history. Yeah. I think that's pretty interesting. I want to talk about history in a way that I feel like history hasn't been talked about, meaning addressing the issues here in the country in which I live, which is the United States of America. So, the city in which I live is the city of Stonecrest, the great city of Stonecrest, and the state is Georgia. So, here in the state of Georgia, located in the United States, we have what we call Georgia history that we learned in our junior high years, meaning sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. You learn about Georgia history, and then during the high school years, you have world history. But like I said, I'm not here to talk about history of the world, and I'm not here to convince you guys that I have all of the answers. Again, my whole objective is to create a dialogue to get you guys thinking and to give you guys something to research and maybe even ask questions about. So let's get over into it. The history of America. Whew. The history of America. Whew. The history of America started off pretty rough. I mean, according to the history books. And that makes you think, meaning his story. When we say his story, who are we referring to? His story. Because someone's telling a story. Now, I've been alive long enough to know that a lot of the pieces of the puzzle is missing when it comes to his story. A lot of the pieces of the puzzle is missing. Prime example, let's take the blacks and whites here in America. A lot of people would think, you know what, the blacks and whites get along. We see them in commercials, we see them in movies, they smiling and they having the time of their life. America, the perfect place, the ideal place. When in actuality, it's propaganda. Meaning, if you was to ask the average white, why didn't white people like blacks? For hundreds of years. Because, again, according to the history books, blacks and whites didn't get along for quite some time, even to this day. Meaning, are they as aggressive as they were back in like 100 years ago? No. Is it still like animosity or some form of hate? Yeah. I live here. All right. Is the playing field balanced or equal? No, it's not. So when it comes to the history here, like I say, it's one thing to say, let's look at Georgia history. Georgia has been a Confederate state for quite some time. Find out what it is to be Confederate. What did the Confederates stand for? What did they believe in? Okay, what about their flag? Are they rebels? That would be a homework you guys can do amongst yourselves or with your family, your friends. Find out what it is to be Confederate. All right. So anyway, let's keep it rolling. Here in America again, the blacks and whites. And right now, you have other nationalities. All right, let's just back up a little bit more. The Native Americans, okay? Of course, we know the land has been stolen or taken away from the Native Americans, all right? From the, who you guys know as the European colonizers. Prior to being called the Europeans, they were the barbarians, all right? What is it to be barbaric? What is a barbaric? What is a barbarian? What is a barbarian? Barbarian. I'm sorry. Barbarian. Barbarian. What is a barbarian? You know what I mean? Because this is the title they was given prior to being called Europeans. So with that being said, that 90% of the Native Americans lost their lives to these barbarians. Okay? The other 10%, they hanging on by a thread. All right? Now, you have the blacks, transatlantic slave ship. Many blacks like to think that their history started with slavery. That's all they've been told. That's all they've been given. And that's the reason I'm convinced a lot of the puzzles are missing, all right? When it comes to his story, a lot of the puzzles are missing. So it makes you think like, again, someone has to ask the question, why don't whites like the blacks? Or why don't Europeans, or why don't the barbarians, or why don't the colonizers like the blacks? All right, because over 400 plus years, it's been a lot of hatred. And when I say hatred, I mean cruel, savage style hatred. I mean savage style hatred to the point where a lot of the Europeans or the whites used to feed the black babies to alligators. Okay? Whites would do make a son have sex with his mother, and that's where the term motherfucker come from. Okay? Whites would stop school just to have the children to witness a lynching. So a black person hanging from a tree, losing their lives, they would allow the children to watch and witness and take pictures of a lynching. Like this is some real savage shit. You know what I'm saying? Some real barbarian type shit. You know what I mean? And you have to ask the question, why was that? Why was there so much hatred? Or why is there still so much hatred? You know, amongst the European community. You know, because there's a such thing as colonizers that basically send settlers out to different countries and different continents for them to politically try and take over someone else's country. Like, what's the reason for that? I mean, like, why won't the Europeans live in harmony? And I'm not saying all Europeans are hateful, or all Caucasians are, or I can't say barbarian, because I mean, that's self-explanatory to be barbarian, you know, or be barbaric, you know what I mean? I mean, you're savage, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, why is that? Okay, and you know, again, it raises the question like, why are they so hateful? You know, and today, if you were to ask the white, like, why did your ancestors hate on black people, or why did they do the things they do? Sell family members and send them on this side of town, send them to this state, send them to that state, because here in America, you know, during the transatlantic, you know, slave trade, they would get blacks and they would separate them, you know, and divide them. You know, we'll take the son, send them over here, sell the son, we'll sell the daughter. That's some real savage shit. That's some real hatred shit. So it kind of makes you think like, what the hell did blacks do that was so evil that you would be so savage? You know, some of the things they do is one thing to say, you know, we're going to have a lynching and we're going to hang a black person. But we're going to call them cruel names, nigger, you know, whatever names they can call, coon, whatever names that was just downright ugly and rude, they would call them that, set them on fire and hang them, you know. And so it kind of makes you think like, what the hell is wrong with these people? Why are they that way? All right. So, like I say, I'm not here to give, you know, to say that I have all of the answers, but from what I've witnessed since I've been alive thus far, hell yeah, it's a lot of hatred amongst white people. And if you ask them, you know, like the ones that are born in the 90s, we don't know. We don't know why our ancestors did that. We don't hate black people. We didn't do nothing. We don't know why it's that way. So in the black communities, we given the history of, you know, we've been taught that this is where this is where things started in our culture and our heritage as slaves. When we know, like deep inside, we know something else. Like, no, Egypt, those, you know, I'm sorry, not Egypt, Kemet, before the colonizers came and changed the names to a lot of places. In a lot of cities, countries, you know, the colonizers came and changed the name. And, you know, again, you know, a lot of people refer to the blacks, oh, they were the slaves. And when in actuality, most of them were prisoners of war. You know, if you went to war and for whatever reason, you know, you lost or you failed at your attempt, then you became a prisoner of war, and they would make you, a servant. You're gonna be a slave. Fuck it. You can't be too PC. And that's why I said we're gonna talk about history in a way that history hasn't been talked about. Like this is some savage stuff. And then, like I say, to this day, it still goes on where whites get to, whites have a certain privilege and get to do things and get away with. Whereas if it was happening to their own kind, you got to ask the question, like, if a lot of whites, like this year alone, 2020, a lot of blacks lost their lives to whites. All right? And it was justified, meaning, oh, they were officers, only if they would obey the officer, did what the officer wanted them to. A lot of it was justified, And so you have to, again, ask the question, why is that? All right? So again, you got this colonizer on the loose and not in sync with harmony, or not living in harmony, and you have to ask the question why. And again, it's not all of them, but it's enough of them. I mean, I want to be cocky and say it's the majority, because like, how can you have heaven on earth and then just belittle everyone else and disrespect everyone else? Because, and the reason I'm being cocky and saying that, because South Africa was colonized by the British. Australia was colonized by the British. The French colonized this country in Africa, that country in Africa, this country in Africa, and the list goes on. Portugal, and the Portuguese, they colonized, and all of these just so happen to be European. So, it kind of raises the, again, the question, like, what is going on with these folk? Like, what's going on? And then anytime you talk about it, oh, that was so long ago, get over it. Whereas if you look at 9/11, oh, a day to remember. So that's a day to remember, but all of what you've done over 400 plus years, separate families, break people like an animal, meaning like a horse. You broke them, you stole their heritage, their names, their culture, their God. Then you give them this religion, Christianity. Like, and I'm not gonna lie to you, man. A lot of blacks, they haven't woken up from it. They, they was given Christianity. Now, mind you, when they come over here, they wasn't speaking English because they're not of English background. A lot of them come over here as kumbaya. That's Hebrew. So it's not even fair to say that these guys were African. That's Hebrew that many of them were speaking. All right, maybe some Africans thrown over in there, but most of them was Hebrew. They got ran out of their country, which is Israel. Israel. The Israelis, those are not the originals. Okay, even when you look at Kemet, that many of you guys know as Egypt. Those are not the original people over there. All right. So I get it. Okay, if you defeated this, country and you took over, all right, I get that part. But why so much hate towards a particular race the way that the Europeans do with the blacks? All right. Not just here in America, South America, you name it. If you dark, are they convinced you got 1%, let alone 5 to 10% black in you, then hey, we're the superior ones. And it don't make sense. And like I said, you talk to the average white, they PC about it, they find ways to justify or just flat out run from it. We don't know. Well, it's rare you're gonna get we don't know, but hey, I wasn't living during those times, I didn't do it. And, they want to be forgiven for what their ancestors have done, and like I say, the history here in America, a lot of blacks weren't even allowed to read. So they was able to get a head start by dumbing down these people. So one thing I said about the black community, they never gave up. They, played the game. They're not like the natives, in the sense that a lot of the natives that was here in this country, they died out. 90% of them, they died out and lost their lives and were killed, and 10% is holding on by a thread, And here we are, still kicking, surviving the game. And when you look at Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood, all right, out in Oklahoma, there was a such town slash city, Black Wall Street. All right, do some homework. Find out about Black Wall Street, Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Find out about. Do some research. These guys, have their own airplanes, their own schools, banks. They were thriving. It was a thriving community. I mean, now that's an ideal community. Meaning when you own the businesses and the homes where you live, that's a community. All right, right now, blacks, our community, the black community, we're not a community. Many of us don't own homes or businesses. And we reside. We reside there. You know what I mean? Like, that's a PC fancy word. We reside in the city of Stonecrest. I mean, not me per se, but like, yeah, just a fancy way of putting it. You know what I mean? But all in all, as a people, we have to pick up the pieces, and it's not going to happen overnight. Not in no 5 or no 10 years, not 400 plus years of conditioning, 400 plus years of your women being doggone raped. You've been robbed blind. You don't even know from whence you came. The average African American. If you say, hey, look, you African American. What part of Africa your people come from? They don't know. They don't know. Even when you look at the names, all right? Many walking around with a European last name, meaning that's who owns you. That's who owns you, okay? And so it's no dish, to the black folk, but it's just, again, we're just talking about history in a way I feel like it haven't been talked about, meaning you got this enemy on the loose. You got these barbarians on the loose, and they seeking to take over the whole world through colonization. You know what I mean? They colonizing. They going around stealing, killing, and ain't nothing being done about it. I mean, until we wake up as a people, whether Asian, Spanish, blacks. I mean, and I'm not trying to make. Well, I can't. It's hard to say that. I'm not trying to make the white side to be the bad guy. We're only talking about the history of these guys. All right. Like, look at the history of these guys. Because this is what we're being taught. Meaning, blacks were slaves, and they was in servitude, and they served who? The Europeans. Why? So that's all we're talking about, the history. And then if you talk about Georgia history, Georgia's Confederate. It's a Confederate state. What is it to be Confederate? What did the Confederate flag stand for? I mean, why were they rebels? And the way that they were, and what did they fight for? These are some questions you should go behind me and do your own homework. All right. Well, you should do your homework behind everything I'm talking about. But again, I feel like these issues should be addressed, and it's just something that shouldn't just be swept under the rug. I mean, you have to talk about it. And again, we're talking about history. And it's a lot of missing pieces. I mean, did the blacks do something prior to say, you know what? When we get a chance to get these guys, we're going to make sure we nail their ass to the floor. We're going to nail their ass to the cross like Black Jesus. All right? And this is where religion and politics and history coexist. Like, dang, Jesus, like, he lived over in Israel. He was born in Bethlehem. That's located in Israel. All right. So again, we're still talking about history. All right. And, according to that history at the time, it wasn't no Israelis over there. The Israelis, those are different people than the Israelites. I see the Bible spoke on in Deuteronomy and also in Revelation. It say those who pretending to be Jews that are not, but synagogues of Satan. So somebody done stole somebody culture, religion, somebody done stole somebody's background. Now, be mindful, the letter J was invented in the 1500s. Okay? So the Jews, what were they called prior to the J? Were they the Hebrews? These are some questions you have to ask yourself, and like I say, and go and research. You know what I mean? Because I mean, you got a group of people, or you know, that's calling themselves Jews, when the letter J was invented 500 years ago, and Jesus died over 2,000 years ago. So if Jesus began with a J, what was his name prior? Was it Yahshua? Oh. So what was Jehovah's name prior to the J? Was it Yahweh? Is that Hebrew? Does that stem and derive from the Torah? Where did these other religions come from, right? Did they derive from the Torah? Did they derive from Hebrew? Hey? So these are some things or some questions you have to ask yourself, you know. When the blacks were brought over here, they had to be given something to believe in order to keep them under control. And you know what that thing was? It was Christianity. It was the Bible to keep them under control. We'll find the best speaker out of the group to boost the morale of the people. Okay? We'll get in the Bible. These are the only things to be taught from this Bible that we're giving you. Obey the master, turn the other cheek, and one day salvation to come. And you had an overseer, you had a white guy there to make sure they only teaching that and only that. So that way the blacks will bow down and serve only them. Obey the master, turn the other cheek, and one day salvation to come. He just told these people to be passive and to not do anything. So meanwhile, you take advantage. That shit is savage. All right? That's just immoral. I mean, it's just savage. I mean, key word, all right? So a lot of people to this day still believe in Christianity. We're waiting for this man to come out of the sky and save us. We're not going to do nothing about our situation, but we're just going to wait for somebody to come save us. What does kumbaya mean? Kumbaya. You know, you dig into the history books and you find out a lot of the blacks that come over, they were saying things like kumbaya. We over here, Yah. We over here. Swing low, sweet chariot. We over here. How did they know Hebrew if they just flat out African? Unless they come from Israel. You know what I mean? They got ran out of their country. They flee down into Africa and they blend in. And you got these other tribal members saying, hey, look, wait a minute. That person is not of our tribe. And so then you hear stories like, oh, blacks are selling blacks. Was these tribes selling the Hebrew? Saying, you know what, they're not of our tribe. They not, no. I mean, so again, do your homework. I'm not here to say I have all of the answers. It's to give you guys some things to think about, all right? You know, so again, you know, a lot of the history we was taught, you know, stem from you guys were only slaves, and that's all you guys were meant to be. Meanwhile, they sell the family members, they rape the women. It's like, wait a minute. If y'all hate blacks so much, why are they raping the women? Feeding the baby to alligators, burning people alive, hanging them from trees, dragging them from trucks. Like, why so savage? Like, you know, and again, if you ask the average white person, they don't want to talk about it. So meanwhile, you're just going to lie, steal, and cheat. You go to other countries, and like I said, you go to the whole Australia been colonized. What is a colonizer? What does it mean to colonize? South Africa. And you got 54 countries in Africa. They all been colonized except for Ethiopia. Okay? So you got the French, the Portuguese, the British, they just all happen to be European background. So why aren't they in sync? Why aren't they living in harmony? What is wrong with this story? When did Rome come into power? The Dark Ages? Really? They come into power during the Dark Ages? And like I say, I'm not here to bash whites and say that all whites are bad. I'm not convinced that all whites are bad. But when you hear certain black people speak on Blue-Eyed Devil, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about the savage ways, the cruel intentions that whites have amongst other races outside of themselves, meaning black, Muslim, Espanol, well, not Espanol, but the Mexicans, all right? All right, because let me see, I think Spain conquered Mexico. Oh no, that's another history. That's Cinco de Mayo. That's dealing with some other history. We're just gonna talk about the history here in this country from what I've witnessed, okay? And that's what I'm here to talk about. You know what I mean? But like I say, history is very important. You know, if you don't know your history, you know it can repeat itself. It can repeat itself. So pay attention to these barbarians, these colonizers. Something is not right. Maybe, you know what, it's a group of people here, some would say shapeshifters, that don't belong on this planet. There's some people here that don't belong, that's just flat out of sync, just out of harmony, man. That don't belong. And so, like I said, when you look into the history books, you look at the Civil War, like, really? The whole Civil War made me think of what we just experienced recently with this election. Today is November the 8th. We just had election day, November the 3rd. Don't you know November the 7th, they're just not electing the president? Election day was November the 3rd. It's November the 7th. Well, no, I'm sorry, November the 8th. November the 7th is when they elected the president. Okay? So it's a lot of propaganda and a lot of fuckery that goes on that people don't know. So it's a lot of deceit, you know, a lot of deceit, you know, a lot of propaganda. You know, they're like, oh, well, in America is the perfect place. They all get along fine. And it's like, no, they don't. It's a trick. It's a lie. A trick is a fancy word for a fucking lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. So like I say, guys, we're just talking about history in a way that I feel like it hasn't been talked about, because we keep on ignoring and we keep being PC about what's really going on. It's a group of hateful people that walk this earth. Okay, so, you know, like I said earlier, you know, that term Blue-Eyed Devil, you know, I think you can associate that with the Nation of Islam, you know what I mean? Because it's like, they know what I know, meaning it's a group of people walking around here being fucking savages and being very hateful. And why? If you got a system that benefits you and cater to you, because that's how it is, meaning you get certain incentives. If you're white in this country of America, you get certain benefits. You get treated a certain way. You know, so they just witnessed what I already know, that, you know, something is extremely wrong. And then everybody just play along. No, everything is fine. Everything is equal. No, it's not. You can be rich. You can have millions of dollars. Shit, you get a little $40,000, $50,000 a year officer that'll come and kill your motherfucking ass and get away with it. They'll kill a child. And then, you know, and get off, you know, and justify the reason of them killing you, and then get off the hook. You know, and then you got to ask yourself, you know, if the tables were turned, would blacks just, you know, be able to get off and just kill as many whites as they have? In 2020 alone, I mean, I can't even name all of the cops that killed black people, and just flat out no justice. It was just justified, meaning even if they raided someone's home and they had no legal right to be there. All right. I mean, the list goes on from Sean Bell to you name it. It was Kendrick Johnson, the guy down in Valdosta. That was one of the worst cases I've seen. I mean, it's too many names to name, meaning how many officers just over the last 30, 40 years just gotten away with just killing folk. And also in this country, when you look at the history, so 100% of the serial killers 95%, I'm sorry, 95% of the serial killers here in America are of European background. So, I mean, Columbine, I mean, you name it. The Florida shooting, the church shooting, what's my boy named Hannibal, Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, like this guy's out there eating the people. I mean, like this is not normal, is what I'm saying. And it's not to point the finger because it's enough blame to go around. I'm convinced there's enough nationalities on this planet, meaning we don't all agree with each other's culture. I mean, if I'm of if I'm Muslim and well, I won't even use religion. You know, if I'm Asian and we do things this way, we say, hey, shoes off before you go inside. And then Americans say, you can wear your shoes in the house. I mean, that's enough to say, you know what, I don't agree with these guys. We can wear our shoes in the house and, you know, these guys want you to take your shoes off. I mean, a lot of cultures don't agree with other cultures. So it's going to be some tension there. You know what I mean? It's, you know, like they don't all get along. So it's not just the whites and the blacks, but be mindful. I'm talking about the blacks and the whites here in this country in which I live. Meaning, this has been going on over 400 plus years. Over 400 plus years, this whole back and forth, this whole I don't like you. And to the point where a lot of blacks looking like, well, we hate you. Look at what you putting us through. We don't like you. You know, and then you got the whites, we hate you, you know, and it's like, you know, you got to be European. I mean, if you're gonna be here in this country, you got to speak English. I mean, I'm not English. You know, even if you look at my government name, I mean, it's European. All right, it's not. It's not. You know what I mean? Mustafa. You know, it's not an African name. It's not Hebrew. You know what I mean? It's not a Hebrew name. I mean, come on, man. I mean, we've been. I mean, just the colonizers just having their way. And like I said, when you try to have these type of conversations, a lot of people run. You know, I mean, but how do you justify being savage? You know, and then, well, the blacks, you know, look at what happened over in Rwanda, you know, genocide. That happened in every country, genocide. In America, it's genocide that's taking place. Again, I just said 95% of America's serial killers are white. 95% of serial killers. Not no person who just went and killed one person. I mean, but just killed multiple people. Are continuously killing the people. Whether they black, white, they don't. You know, people kill what's in proximity. Okay? You know, and I'm not saying that it's right. But like I say, again, guys, go behind me. You know, let's create a dialogue. Let's talk about these issues that we have to face. You know what I mean? We all live on this planet, and I mean, what are shapeshifters? What are shapeshifters? What is the Draco constellation? Because I'm convinced there's a people on this planet that does not belong. So even if they're shape-shifting and looking like human beings, there's a group of people that's just not in sync. I mean, if you would have watched the film, I think that was subliminal. It's a film, Avatar. Avatar, they go and just target these people planet and just go there to take over for whatever reason they're there to take over. For riches, for resources, you know what I mean? But that was very subliminal. So yeah, guys, look into it, and like I said, we're just talking about history in a way that history hasn't been talked about. And again, I won't keep you guys as long. I mean, I kept you guys long enough. If you bear with me this long, comment. Maybe you can give me some things to research. And I want to be clear, I'm not here to say that I'm right about everything. And I'm not here to make all Europeans out to be the bad guys. But according to history, Georgia history, meaning Georgia is a Confederate state. Find out what it is to be Confederate, what the Confederate flag means, rebels, you know, what the rebels or Confederates fought for. You know, were there black Confederate soldiers? Why were there black Confederate soldiers? Why were they fighting the war? I mean, many would, you know, argue that, hey, look, they was told that they would be free if they go and help out. Hey, we'll free you. We'll do this for you, but just go and help us out. You know, but find out what that Civil War was about when it comes to these Confederate states, you know, who didn't want to end slavery, you know, who just wanted to ride on the backs of other people, you know, and not put in some real fucking work. You know what I'm saying? But just mooch, you know, okay, we're going to use these guys for our benefits, you know, and find out what that stuff is about, man. And like I said, we're going to conclude this session today, this topic, this subject, history. We're talking about history in a way that history hasn't been talked about. And yeah, let's do some research. Let's do some homework and find out, you know, what this small group of people are, the minority on this planet. Why so hostile? Why so angry? Why, you know, just feel the need to just control everything and to be superior? Like what's that about, you know? Real quick, I heard the devil and his angels were kicked out of heaven and sent down here to earth, and they would rule earth. You know, so it kind of goes back to what I was saying early on in the video about how our religion and politics and our history kind of relate to one another, you know. So it's like, I mean, does that have anything to do with it being that these evil angels or the bad guys were kicked out of heaven and sent down here on earth to wreak havoc amongst men and women? Maybe that has something to do with it, but let's just create a dialogue. Let's ask questions. Let's talk about it. Let's see if we can all work together, being that we have the World Wide Web, www. That way we can all put our answers together and come up with a solution on how we could work together in harmony with one another, you know. So again, that's my time. Thank you for paying attention, taking the time to watch Random Sunset. We talked about history in a way that I feel history wasn't talked about, meaning it's not to say that all whites are saints or all blacks are. I think it's hate on both sides. I think when it comes to different nationalities, you know, it's always going to be some type of conflict, you know, with not agreeing with one another. You know, hey, you know, the Cambodians or the Thai people of Southeast Asia say, hey, you have to take your shoes off at the door. But most Americans are like, hey, we walk in the house with our shoes on. So, I mean, that's a reason to, hey, you know, like, we don't agree with that. Well, we don't agree with this, you know. So, I don't think it's just the blacks and whites, but here in this country, United States of America, just wanted to talk about some of the history here. So, again, guys, that's my time. You know, I appreciate you guys taking the time out your day to be a part of Random Sunset. Over and out.